Pastor Mark Biltz here from Shaddai Ministries. Thank you again so much for watching, and make sure to subscribe and share. Also, please like this video, and we would love to hear your comments. Thanks again for watching. Bye-bye. Okay, they've been sitting there for almost a full year at Sinai, and God said, your year vacation is up. It's time to move on. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if that wasn't a Shemitah year that they rested. I'd have to check into that, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was. Okay, now, look at this. This is incredible. This is Numbers 10, 33 and 34. It says, they departed from the mountain of the Lord on a 3-day journey. And the ark of the covenant of the Lord went before them in the 3-day journey to search out a resting place for them. And the cloud of the Lord was upon them by day when they went out of the camp. Okay, so here we go. Look at Numbers 10:35. It says, it came to pass when the ark set forward. Listen to what Moses said. Here's the Beha'alatka, the rise up again, as the theme of this Torah portion. Moses says, as the ark rose up and on the sons of Aaron's shoulders, and they're marching, Moses says, rise up, Lord, and let your enemies be scattered. Let those who hate you flee before you. And then look at verse 36. It says, when rested, he said, return, O Lord, to the many thousands of Israel. Okay, I'm going to show you this PowerPoint. Here we go. It says, whenever the ark set out, here's what Moses said. Rise up, O Lord. May your enemies be scattered. May your foes flee before you. Whenever it came to rest, he said, return, O Lord, to the countless thousands of Israel. There is something that happens, an anomaly. I want you to see this. Here it is. There are two upside down letter noons that bracket these two verses, and the noon represent fish, and because they're backward and upside down, they represent dead fish. Here is the picture of the Torah scroll, and you will see those two upside down letter noons that bracket this verse. This verse is so incredibly famous that they even say it's almost like a whole separate book of the Torah just on its own. Nowhere else does this happen. And some of them say that these two verses that are special and set apart, in one sense, promised what could have been. But instead, what happened? They now had to go 38 more years in the wilderness because they were moaning and groaning. So here those two verses are. They're upside down and backwards. Now, noon, let me mention this. Here is a modern noon, and again, it represents fish. But in the ancient Paleo or Proto-Canaanite Hebrew, it looked like a fish darting through water. Well, fish, when you think of fish, they're supposed to be alive and just hopping like crazy. All right? So if you were to go to a beach and you were to see fish that are alive, wow, that's great. But sometimes you may see a fish that is dead. Well, this symbolizes death. One is life, one is death. Well, guess what? We know our Messiah also went on a 3-day journey as well. And what these two inverted noons represent here, the first, rise up, O Lord, speaks of Yeshua's resurrection and victory over death, which causes enemies to be scattered. And then the second one, return, O Lord, refers to the second coming, when all of God's people will also rise up and appear before him. This is speaking of the resurrection of the dead. And so this is exciting because here one represents Messiah's resurrection 2,000 years ago, and then his return and our resurrection. So in one sense, as Messiah rises up, so do we rise up. And so now, here we find, and we've already learned, that the camp travels only when the cloud is lifted up. Here Moses calls upon God to rise up, to lift the cloud, and then the nation marches forward into the land of Israel. Well, now this ragtag group of individuals have coalesced into a nation. The nation of Israel has been born for the first time. Now, what's important for us to always realize is that when God tells us to strike camp and move forward, the ark has to come along with us. We don't want to get ahead or get behind of God's presence. It's God being near to us that helps us to overcome all of our enemies. Now, the other interesting thing about this letter Nun, I want to mention that you will notice that the letter Nun here is the 14th letter. Okay, and it also represents David. Okay, so here's the 14th letter, the Nun. Well, look at this. The 4th letter is the Dalet. The 6th letter is the Vav. Well, David's name is a Dalet, a Vav, and a Dalet, which equals 14. And the 14th letter is the letter Nun, representing life. Now, here we have David representing life, and so what we see here is the letter Nun, which equals fish, live fish, which is also the 14th letter representing King David, and it also represents the throne of God. Well, listen to Matthew 1:1. It says a record of the genealogy of Yeshua the Messiah, the son of David. And then in Matthew 1:17, it says all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations. From David to the exile, 14 generations. From the exile to the Messiah, 14 generations. What Matthew is telling us is that Yeshua is the son of David. He is the Messiah. And this is all tied to the number 14 and the letter Nun.